have you heard of Bryan Johnson? Are you familiar with Bryan
Yes,
Johnson?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts on Bryan Johnson are.
Well, I think that Brian Johnson gears his life towards his sleep, whereas I view
Yes.
sleep as being a fundamental aspect of life. I guess it comes down to an ideological view.
Yeah.
I know that he pursues the perfect night's sleep by defining every aspect of his waking life. I would perhaps take a slightly different view.
Yes. How much more benefit do you think you get from hypothetical perfect sleep than to what the average, maybe not the average person, say better than the average person, say 80% perfect sleep? I know these numbers are kind of abstract, but I'm curious in your thoughts, like what really is the difference there in cognitive ability and focus and mood, energy levels?
I think the answers to that is it's a great unknown
Yeah.
because our brains are remarkably adaptive organs. They are able to cope with deviations from the optimal very, very well. We see that in the sleep lab, for example. If somebody's very sleep deprived and you bring them into the sleep lab, then their brain actually prioritizes very deep N3 sleep over other stages of sleep as an adaptive mechanism. So the question, I guess, is there any advantage to going from 90% to
Exactly.
100%?
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to that. I think that these are going to require very long-term studies.
Yes.
And I guess with somebody like Brian Johnson, one of the key aspects to this um, is is this going to increase longevity? Is this going to increase cognitive performance in the long term? So I
Yes.
think he's now in his 50s, is that right? Or somewhere in that sort of region?
He might be his 40s, late
The
40s, 50s. I'm not
late
sure.
40s, yeah. So,
He's,
what is his cognitive performance going to be like when he's 90? Is it going to protect from things like, Alzheimer's disease or more broadly cognitive decline? Of course, that's going to be very difficult to unravel from
yeah.
the effects of all the other things that he's doing.
Yes. Yes, exactly. One of the things that he really preaches about is moving your last meal back. I think his last meal is at 2 p.m. in the day, which I think is when my first meal is. It's a bit insane, and I don't think the way I do this is perfectly optimized for sleep either, because again, the Spanish start cooking their dinner at 10 p.m., which is just
Yeah.
insane. And I've found that the only way that fits into my daily schedule of trying to get all the work done and exercise is to eat late. How big a factor do you think that one is, eating close to the time of bed?
I think for most people, it doesn't make a huge amount of difference. I see people who say, well, I'm woken up by hunger in the night if I eat too early. So, again, this is a very individual thing. There are some individuals, for example, who say, well, look, if I go to bed just after a big meal, I feel very bloated and that makes me feel uncomfortable and therefore my sleep suffers. Or there are some individuals in whom we know that actually a very large carbohydrate rich meal actually causes rebound hypoglycemia at night, which fragments their sleep. Or there are some individuals who have, esophageal reflux and they get heartburn if they lie down immediately after a big meal. So I think it's a very individual thing.
And with maybe a special case of have a look at the carbohydrate content of that last meal, because that might be the most disruptive.
That might, in certain individuals, be an important factor. Yeah.
Okay, that's good nuance, and I'm glad to say that it is that you said that it's not completely just destroying my sleep. What do you think about face masks? I've recently bought a face mask, and I think it's been genuinely marvelous. I can't believe
Yeah.
I've waited this long. What's your
Yeah.
genuine opinion on face masks?
You mean to block out light? Is
Yes,
that
just
yeah,
for a good
yeah,
night's sleep.
yeah. We know that light levels are of fundamental importance to sleep quality. Interestingly, there was a very recent study from China that correlated exposure to light at night with increased risk of type 2 diabetes, for example.
Mm.
So the fact is that most of us who live in an urban environment do not sleep in completely dark circumstances. So I think that actually blackout blinds, eye masks, these kinds of things, again, comes down to, if you sleep like a baby, regardless of anything, then you don't need to wear a face mask. If you're, one of those individuals who doesn't achieve the perfect night's sleep on a regular basis, then actually making sure that you sleep in very dark circumstances is likely to make some impact on the quality of your sleep.
Right. Is it a myth that we have photoreceptors on our toes and knees and elbows and everything that is also taking in photons and stimulating us and making us aroused?
I mean, a few years ago, there was this story that we had cells in the back of our knees that influenced our circadian rhythm, and therefore actually having lights in in airplane seats that were targeted at the back of our knees might help with jet lag. I think that's been very much discounted now. We know that the cells that are of fundamental importance in regulating our sleep are actually at the back of our eyes. They're in our retina. They're not involved in vision at all. They have direct connections between our retina and the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is where the circadian clock, or the master circadian clock, is located within the brain. So you can wiggle your toes in sunlight as much as you want, but I suspect it's not going to make much difference.
Yeah.
I really hope you enjoyed that clip with sleep expert Guy Leschner. If you did, I'm really confident you'll enjoy our full conversation. You can watch it now here.